Hi, everyone. This is Talk Back. It's Wednesday, September 17th, 2020. It's been a tough year. We're 6 months into a pandemic, almost no end in sight. We are craving our intimate connections with our family and our friends and trying to do the best for our public health. So many issues on the table, from the pandemic to social unrest to the racial unrest that we have, with some issues of police brutality and criminal justice. We've had power outages in Connecticut. All of this at the same time as a very, very important cause cannot be forgotten, something that is somewhat exacerbated during this period of time when people are forced to be at home and in close quarters with loved ones and others who may be harming them. Domestic violence is a very important issue in our country. It still affects 3 out of 4 women and men who are brutalized via physical abuse, psychological battering, bullying, and so many other ways that they cannot lead healthy and normal lives. And a very important agency in our community, Safe Futures, exists to help educate and take care of and bring support to people who need to learn how to lead healthy lives and get out of emergency situations when they are threatened with their lives. So I'm happy to have 2 people from Safe Futures who are going to tell us about an important project that we have every year, a walk for domestic violence awareness. Only this year, we can't walk side by side together with everyone. Maybe we can walk side by side with our family and close friends in our circles and do it virtually and raise money and support for a very, very important cause, ending domestic violence. So let me introduce the 2 people from Safe Futures who will tell us about the plans for October 1, the beginning of Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Let's introduce Melissa and Nazmi. Hi. So nice to have both of you. Melissa Zajic, Nazmi Ojeda. I would like you each to introduce yourselves and tell us what you do for Safe Futures. Nazmi, you first. We had you on a few months ago when we talked about the importance of this issue during a pandemic.
Hi, everyone, and thank you, Sheila, for having me again on your show. It's always a pleasure. So I'm Nazmi Ojeda, and I'm the Director of Education and Community Engagement here at Safe Futures.
Okay. And Melissa?
Yes, hello, Sheila. I echo what Nazmi has said. Thank you for having us again. You're always a great supporter of domestic violence awareness. My name is Melissa Zajic. I'm the Director of Development and Communications for Safe Futures.
Okay. So tell us, Melissa, what is special about this year? We can't have the walk with maybe hundreds of people gathering indoors at the Crystal Mall the way it has happened the last few years. What are we going to do to increase awareness for October, Domestic Violence Awareness Month? How is it going to happen?
Well, that's a great question, and I'm happy to answer that. Special is a great adjective to use for what's happening in all our communities. And Safe Futures is no different from many organizations who have not been able to go forward with some of their plans and the awareness of their causes. And we join them. Last year, as you quite remember, we had a phenomenal outpouring of support from the community. Over 700 people participated in our walk, everything from students, community members, groups. It was wonderful, and the energy, I can't even describe it. So going virtual is always a challenge, and this actually is Safe Futures' very first virtual event. So although it's a challenge, it's also an opportunity to do things differently, but still effectively, and try to create that same energy. So what we've decided to do this year is on October 1st through October 4th. And as you said, Sheila, October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We will be having a virtual walk where our supporters can register for the walk and they can complete this 4K over the 4 days. And the tagline for this particular event is 4K Your Way. And we have embraced the virtual platform so that people have the freedom, because we're not bound by any barriers or space and time over the 4 days, to complete your 4K in any which way that you would prefer, whether you like to walk, run, bike, cycle, swim. It might be dancing. It could be yoga. So we are really embracing this and want to have a lot of fun with it.
Okay. So that's great that you're having this. We're going to talk more about exactly what people can do to sign up and how they might do it in their communities and with their families and their friends. But I want to turn to Nazmi to talk about what domestic violence is. We always have people who need to be educated somewhat in exactly what we're talking about. And before Nazmi speaks, let me play a video that helps people understand how they might be feeling emotionally before they need to call out to Safe Futures in our community for help. So let me do this, and then Nazmi, I'd like you to explain it in greater detail. Here we go. Nazmi, that was a very powerful video. Speak to it, speak to the emotions, and speak to the help when they make that call and call out. What is the response going to be?
Well, I think the first thing I want to say is that, just like the video pointed out, in our ask to our community, is that we're really here to listen. We're here to support. And I really like to emphasize that domestic violence, sexual assault, trauma, it looks different for every person, right? And we never want to make a person feel like they can't come to us for help or support because, oh, it's just, my partner is yelling at me, or, oh, it's just arguments, or it's physical, but it doesn't leave marks, or it's emotional, but my kids don't hear it. We really want folks to understand that we're here for every person, no matter what the situation is. So that's the first thing I'd like to say. The second thing I'd like to say is that domestic violence is really about power and control, right? So like we saw in that video, we saw a lot of isolation. We saw a lot of loneliness. We saw words like overwhelmed, anxious. And so what happens in a pattern of abuse or in an abusive relationship is that one person tries to control and demand of and literally manipulate an entire person's life, whether it's their schedule, their money, how they think and feel about what they want, how they think and feel about themselves, how they think and feel about regular things like whether they want to take their kids to school right now, in lieu of the situation, or they want to have them homeschool. In their day-to-day lives, they are being told what to do by their intimate partner, right? And that could look very different for many people. Like I mentioned, domestic violence has it has no face, but it can take on many roles, whether it's emotional, physical, psychological, financial, stalking or harassing. All of those things can play into an unhealthy, abusive relationship. And like the video said, we're here to listen, we're here to support. And if anybody out there is having a hard time understanding what that means, I am a person that really appreciates examples, and I never want to compare one situation to another and minimize it, but I think that we're in a very particular time. And so, with COVID and all of the restrictions and the rules, I really do find that folks who don't get it can take an opportunity to sit back and reflect and say, wow, because of this pandemic that we're in, I can't go to the grocery store without a mask. Or, recently I tried to go in earlier and I realized that 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. is for a specific population, and that's out of my control. So I had to wait another hour to go to the grocery store, right? So somebody else is telling me when I can go grocery shopping. We are restricted about what time we can do things. We are being encouraged to shop online versus to shop in person. There's all these different things that play into our day-to-day decisions that are outside of our control, right? And we do our best to abide by them and to follow them because we care about our safety. And we care about the safety of our loved ones and our families, right? And so when we think about domestic violence and we find ourselves not understanding, or we find ourselves thinking, why doesn't she just leave? Or why doesn't he just tell her he doesn't want to be in a relationship, or vice versa? We can take a moment to step back and think about, wait a minute, just like in this pandemic, if a person decides to go to the grocery store, or if a person tries to sneak into this facility or that facility, they could potentially get somebody else really sick, somebody with a compromised immune system, somebody who's weaker than them, right? And so this situation has forced us to think outside of ourselves because we can't do certain things. So again, when you are having a hard time understanding a loved one, a family member, a friend, and you're just thinking, what, this person, they just need to get it together and go, send them our way first. And second, really, people just want to be heard and they want to be supported, And a lot of times what we see on the surface is not actually what's going on behind closed doors.
Okay. Let me ask Melissa. Melissa, have there been an increase in the use of the hotline during this COVID period? Because you read stories all around the world that the rate of domestic violence outbreaks is greater because of COVID.
Yes, well, we are reading a lot of that, and I can't speak to the national numbers, but I know in our area, our hotline calls have increased about 20%. The Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is our umbrella agency, keeps most of the stats statewide, and there has been a remarkable increase. And also, we know that people are calling that maybe have never called before. So that's a great difference. And as Nazmi made a great analogy of COVID and control and what that's happening, the pandemic has also created an opportunity for the abuser. And because it aligns with what their tactics are, which is isolation and control. So the pandemic brings a great opportunity to enforce that even greater by bringing guilt. You might get me sick. You shouldn't go out there. Using the pandemic of all reasons why to cut off contact. So it's a great analogy. And yes, absolutely, there has been an increase. And we're hearing those stories nationwide.
Okay. So Nazmi, I want you to talk about kids because when we think of domestic violence, and as we've been talking about it now, we're envisioning, in most cases, a woman, but it can be a man, who is being in some way battered, whether physically or emotionally, isolated, the way you put it, by a lover, a husband, a significant other, a boyfriend, etc. Sometimes a family member even. But what about the kids? They are under so much stress and tension now. They don't know if they're learning virtually, they're at home, who's helping them with their homework, what are mom and dad doing? Maybe it isn't a dad, it's a mom's boyfriend. And let's talk about the emotional terrors that some of these kids live under, either observing domestic violence in the home against one of their parents, or actually being a victim themselves. Talk about the kids. We know millions of kids are either bystanders, observers, or victims, and either one is a psychological terror and just as damaging to their healthy relationships in the future.
Absolutely. You're 100% correct about that. I feel really proud to say that Safe Futures has made a very cognizant decision to treat families in a whole way, right? And so when I say that, and back to what I mentioned earlier, domestic violence has no face, right? And so when we think about its effect on a human, right? I think that's one of my favorite ways to explain it, to express it, whether they're 5 years old or whether they're 65 years old. When a human being, a person, experiences domestic violence trauma, it affects every aspect of their life. And what we're seeing with children is that we are for years now, we have been treating them as individuals, not just as, oh, it's a mom who happens to have a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old. Let's make sure we provide her with services, and the kids will be okay as a result of that. No, we're looking at each individual member of the family, because we understand, especially with children, they're at an impressionable age. They're as little ones, they are learning from their parents, they're watching their parents or their parent guardians, right? And so a lot of the things that they are understanding about relationship dynamics, they're watching, they're listening, they're feeling, right? And so for a long time, we thought of folks as secondary victims. And I think now we're looking at the direct correlation that trauma has on kids that have seen, heard, felt, whether, like you mentioned, whether it's direct or indirect, it still has a huge impact on their life. And so we're really trying to step in with specific services for children to help mitigate some of that. And so we have a bunch of different programs. And again, I don't want to plug, but I'm going to plug, calling our hotline isn't just about a grown-up. We also have a child advocate. We also have counseling for children and for young people. We have staff here who go out into schools and teach, or right now we're getting creative. We're doing virtual lessons. And so a healthy relationship starts with an individual, right? With yourself. And it's something that I try to teach my daughter and my son. They have to learn kindness and boundaries and all of those good, healthy things for themselves so that they can later practice them in their relationships, whether platonic or romantic, right? And so our children are so, so important. When we talk about doing 4K your way, my 4K has to involve my kids, right? Because I want to be a model, because I want to set that tone, that what I'm putting out in the community, I'm also putting in the community in my home, right? And what we've seen with children is that when they are affected by domestic violence and trauma, they tend to try to grow up faster. They're affected at school. Their sleeping patterns are affected, and all those different things that happen to grown-ups, where we're feeling anxious or depressed or sad or hurt, where we retreat or we don't talk about our feelings, or we act out in anger. Children do the same thing, right? They just have less of a filter. So what we're trying to do is really reach out. We're reaching out in our residential programs, whether it's in person in a safe way, or it's, like this via a virtual medium. We're also making sure that we're delivering to our residential programs and to our community clients packets, whether it's coloring, whether it's we've gotten face masks donated so that folks can pick them up. We've gotten extra different things to help families out. But I think the most important point that I'd like to make is that as a human, as a person, this has such a huge effect on our mental, emotional, and even our physical health. Again, whether you're 5 or 65. So we are doing our best to treat every single individual where they're at, and really gauge what those needs are.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Yes. I know that you've got programs in the schools and how that's going to go forward with our virtual world today. It's something I guess you're going to figure out. And you have programs that are helping families and helping kids with healthy relationships. This is what always interested me as an attorney, looking in on families who had these issues. how does a kid make that cry out for help and get recognized? Who does it on behalf of that kid, whether it's an 8-year-old, a 6-year-old, even a 13-year-old? How do they get to the attention of Safe Futures? Nazmi, you take that again.
Sure. So, I think another thing I like to say is that we want to make advocates out of you, right? How can you support Safe Futures? You can support us by encouraging folks to call our hotline. You can encourage referrals to us. And so we really, our community is just so important. If you're a teacher, if you're a psychologist, if you're, I don't know, a grocery store teller, any person really can make that referral. Any person can hold on to that phone number, the 860-701-6000, and say, hey, I might not know how to help you through this right now, or I might not have the words to give you. I don't know what to say, but here is a place where you can find that, and with children, I will say they are much more honest than grown-ups, and I've had some really refreshing moments working in our residential and in our direct service with clients, with kids specifically. They get excited over things that grown-ups might be suspicious over. They're happy to share their truth. And I think when you don't see that in a child, I think that's the biggest tell, right? When you see a child in front of you lose some of that light, right? Some of that purity, that desire to be honest and not think about what a person is going to think about them, I think that's when we really understand how we have to step in. So I would just implore our community to be there for us, to help us, to be an advocate with us.
Well, that's important advice, and we know that by law, certain professions in the medical fields are required to be reporters when they hear things. But of course, with the COVID now, and if kids are at home, they're not theing the social workers at school, the teachers, and the other people that might ordinarily make the referral, because people are bound to their homes more. So that's why I worry more about the kids at this time. But your points are very good. We're all in this together, and when we see something, we need to find out what to do about it. And calling Safe Futures, if you know of a family where you think that the kids are in real trouble, contact Safe Futures and have a chat with them as to the best way to proceed to get the help that they need. Melissa, when I make that call as someone who is worried about my life, I think I'm being bullied, I'm frightened. What happens to me on that first call? Is it confidential? And what kind of services are you going to provide for me, depending on how serious you think my issues are?
Well, what I want to say, first of all, is our hotline is 24/7. It's manned by an advocate, so you'll always get somebody there. It's always staffed. We have an umbrella of confidentiality. So we are mandated reporters, of course, but not with it coming from domestic violence point of view. And what will happen is, if a caller wants to remain anonymous, they certainly can. And that sometimes will allow people the freedom to make their first call. So we want to make sure people know that. They do not have to identify when they call. At that time, they're going to get an advocate on the phone. And that advocate is first going to find out if immediate danger is at hand, if they're safe right now in that moment. So that will be the first thing to establish. From there, one of the things we practice is victim-defined advocacy. And that does align with our 4K Your Way. We practice victim-defined advocacy because victims and survivors have been controlled and told what to do, when to do things in their life. And this gives them an opportunity to take a look at their particular situation. Suppose I'm married, I have one child, I am a stay-at-home mom. My husband is gainfully employed, supplies all my support financially. And if I were to go, I might lose childcare, everything that I depend upon for my well-being and to actually exist. So my safety plan with my advocate may not be to leave. of course, we're saying that they're not in danger of being hurt or murdered. And I'll talk more about that later with our lethality assessment program. But that's what you're going to get when you call. You're going to define your experience based on what you need at that point in time. And it is a confidential call.
Okay, so let's get to it. If you think that someone has a really serious emergency, but they're hesitant, they're frightened, but you, as an experienced advocate answering that hotline, you know something has got to be done. How do you go about your advocacy, your counseling that person to see what can be done to protect them? Melissa, you take that too.
Certainly. Well, as you know, Sheila, we have advocates in the court too. I worked several years in the criminal courts, and our advocates do an assessment when they speak with a victim. And that assessment will give us an idea if they're in immediate danger. So that tool does help us, and we want to advise them of that at that point in time.
Okay. And then there is a liaison and arrangements to help them get the legal advice they need, to do the legal paperwork they need, to get the things going that will help them separate from the abuser, right?
Well, we don't give legal advice because we're not attorneys, as you know.
No, I mean referring. You're referring them.
Right.
Yes.
So we may do that. However, we do have both civil and criminal advocates if there is a pending case, or perhaps somebody's in the midst of dissolution of marriage. So we will guide people and give them the information. Things like temporary restraining orders, we can help with that paperwork and do that now electronically. And legislature, we're pushing the legislature now to continue that, because it helps victims not have to face their abuser in the typical courtroom scene. As far as those who are calling or coming in to meet with a counselor and advocate at Safe Futures, again, we would go over what their plan is, their safety plan, based on where they feel they're comfortable in doing. Do they want a safety plan to leave? Do they want a safety plan to stay with friends, relatives, and all of those pieces? It is a complex situation, and as Nazmi mentioned, individual to each and every person. There is no cookie cutter plan for anyone, but we do have some staples that are important to keep people safe, and that's what we would go over.
Right. And it all starts with that first phone call that is private. So don't be afraid to make that call. You don't have to disclose your identity. You will get counseling, and you will figure it out for yourself with the help of experts. And Safe Futures can lead you to referrals for the things that you need to proceed and go forward. Don't be afraid to make that first call. Okay. And they won't direct you. As you said, Melissa, they won't tell you what to do. They will work with you to find the way that you need at your time level, at your emotional level, to do what you need to do for yourself and your family. Okay.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to make that first call. Let's go to Nazmi. Before we get to more details about the walk, which we'll get into, of course, talk about October having the designation as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. What other things are you going to be doing to get out to the community in your role to give education on domestic violence after the walk is done in the beginning of October? We still got the whole month to figure out all the things we need to do to educate people about it.
So we're doing a couple different things here at Safe Futures. We really try to connect with the community in different ways. And I think as far as my role is concerned, very similar to other folks, we're in this virtual world, right? Trying to navigate trainings and meetings and facilitating in a way that is still really connecting folks, but also keeping us safe. So we post regularly on our website, and also on our Facebook page and Instagram, and I believe we have a Twitter where we will update the things that we have coming up. We always ask, again, like I said, folks word of mouth. Word of mouth is really big here in the work that we do. And honestly, Sheila, I'm going to be very honest. I think honesty is important. I'm taking it one day at a time. I am having conversations with local colleges and seeing how we can use students and interns in a new and creative way, and really trying to understand people and their immediate needs in this moment during this time, right? Because everything is so unique. I really just wanted to take a minute I was thinking about what Melissa was saying and what she was explaining. And I just think it's ever so important for the community, for your audience to understand that we truly are here to listen, right? And we provide support in many ways, but primarily we're here to help folks understand that what they feel, what they want matters, right? I know that my mom gets very upset with me because I don't like going to the doctor, right? I say, oh my goodness, if I go to the doctor and I say I have these and these symptoms, I'm probably going to get a prescription for blah, 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 right? And I'm like, oh, I don't like the taste of penicillin. I don't know, I'm making it up. So I don't want to call the doctor, and I don't want to tell the doctor that I'm feeling A, B, and C, because I don't want to have to take this prescription, right? At Safe Futures, you don't have to worry about that. You don't have to worry about saying or thinking, oh, I'm going to call the hotline and I'm going to mention to this stranger that I think I'm in an abusive relationship, that my partner who I love and have been with for 25 years isn't kind to me, doesn't use nice words toward me, physically assaults me. That's incredibly hard. It is incredibly hard to say it. It's incredibly hard to figure it out. It's incredibly hard to verbalize it out loud, especially to a stranger. And so back to that piece that Melissa mentioned, it's not about a prescription. It's not about a very specific set of answers, because only you know what you need, and only you know what can keep you safe. So really, we're here to listen and to make sure that we can give back resources and even if it's just silence for half an hour over the phone counseling or in person, because we're still doing that. I really just wanted folks to hear that part, that you're not gonna, the expectation isn't for you to leave the space, the room, the conversation with a very specific thing to do, where we're going to say you should X, Y, or Z. No, that's not what we're here to do. We really are here to listen, to support, to validate, and really help you figure it out.
Okay, great. So Melissa, before we get to the more details about the walk and how people can do it, you mentioned lethality assessment. So why don't you just explain that so we don't leave that without being spoken about?
Thank you so much for coming back to that, Sheila. The lethality assessment program is a program that Safe Futures is very, very happy about implementing over the past few years. Every single police department in our catchment area voluntarily signed on for this program. The lethality assessment, what it does is when officers go to a domestic violence call, and they're at the scene, they use a tool also to assess, and it is for the risk of murder. If whoever is identified as a victim scores as high risk, they immediately put them in touch with an advocate at Safe Futures. At that point, the victim can choose to get services and work on a safety plan. Now, again, this is defined by whoever's identified as the victim at the scene. But we are very happy to say that about 84% of the victims that were identified as high risk did come and get further services. And as you sadly know, in southeastern Connecticut, we have had several domestic violence murders, and we don't want another one. This particular program is very important to what we do. Our partners in law enforcement have understood and partnered with us side by side to make sure that people have access to our services. And we are very grateful for the community for doing that.
Okay. And just one more thought that people might be interested in, NASME, to know what you mentioned several times, the residential services. So we know you have the Phoenix House for people who are working on their issues, recovering from their issues. Just explain very briefly what the the residence environment is like at Safe Futures.
Sure. So we have several residential programs. We have our emergency shelter, which is at an undisclosed location for safety reasons. And that space is specifically for folks who are in crisis and actively fleeing domestic violence, sexual assault, stalking, or trafficking in southeastern Connecticut. And then we have our transitional living program, which is on site right next to our main office on 16 J Street. It's the building next door, and that is a transitional living program. It's up to 2 years. There's case management. There's a little bit more freedom and navigating when you do things, when you meet with a case manager and things like that. And the idea of that program is that you're working on all of your resources and building capacity to move out into community living, which is, wherever it is that you feel safe, whatever area, apartment, house, whatever living arrangement it is that is most fitting to you. We have families and single individuals in both our emergency shelter and our transitional living program. We also have Katie Blair House and Flora O'Neill, which are programs through Bethsaida, which we acquired. Melissa, you can help me out with the date. It's been some time now, but those programs are specific for people who want support with substance misuse and have that specific need. And finally, we also have a scattered site program, and that is out in the community where folks have their own apartment and have case management through the course of a year, whether it's in person or on the phone, but they navigate a lot of their own housing needs and things like that. Again, calling the hotline is not just about counseling. If you have questions about any of these programs that I just mentioned, or how to do it, how to get in it, more information, our hotline is also another great resource for talking to an advocate about any of those programs and how to access them.
All right, great. All right, now, Melissa, let's get into talking about, let me put up a slide, talking about October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month and the walk, okay?
Absolutely. So, first of all, I do want to say October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, the statistic is that 3 out of 4 Americans know somebody who've been affected by domestic violence. That's pretty amazing that there is that much and so many people are aware. And as we have said all through this time with you, Sheila, listening is a key for someone who is going to need help. And we want to make sure they get resources. So listening and not shutting that door, being aware. So what I ask the entire community to do in the month of October and all through the year is just be aware, learn something about domestic violence. Because if 3 out of 4 Americans know someone who's experiencing the impact of domestic violence, what you learn may save a life. So I just want to ask you, as our friends and our community, to please do that. And one of the ways you can do that is support our walk. And as you know, we're going virtual this year. Our mission is to save lives, restore hope, and change the future. And we do that by opening this up to everyone, from the smallest child to the most elderly. We know that this affects our entire community, and we want everybody involved. That was the beauty of last year. We had so many young people involved, saying also that they were not going to stand for domestic violence. They were going to educate themselves. They were going to be aware. And so this year, doing it virtually, 4K your way, you can sign up, you can register, and we're having a registration event on October 3rd at Philomena's Restaurant in Waterford from noon to 3. You'll get your own Safe Futures mask swag. So we have PPE ready for you with our logo. You can register. We'll also be having a raffle there. And so it's a great opportunity if you want to drive through and do an in-person. Otherwise, you can go online and register for the walk. Create a team, if you like, of your friends and family and get them to support you. We really encourage people to take great videos and photographs of their 4K style. whatever that might be. Post them to Facebook, tag Safe Futures. On our registration drive, it's also a live broadcast with Q105, so they'll be there as well. And they have joined us in this, as you have, Sheila, to really support awareness of domestic violence throughout October and throughout the entire year. We hope that one day an agency like Safe Futures won't be needed. And so we continue our work with the support of this very caring community. We are so terribly lucky to have all of you. You have embraced us, you've embraced our mission, and you continue to support our work so that we can support everyone in our community and keep them safe.
Okay, so October 1 to 4, does that mean on any one of those days we can do our walking, take our videos, take our FaceTimes and communicate? Is that right?
Absolutely. And you can upload videos and photographs now of what you're going to do if you like. Suppose you're going to take Fido out for a walk, and don't forget, we are a pet friendly shelter and emergency situation. We take pets in all our programs. We are only one of 200 shelters in the US that accept pets. So if you're going to take a walk with Fido, take a picture. We have a series of videos on our Facebook page. They're called Ready, Set, Go. And it gives you lots of creative ideas of how you might do your 4K. So although this is a very serious subject, we know we all need a little levity when we're dealing with something like this, especially during COVID and with all the victims or survivors who are experiencing even more barriers to safety and a life without violence. So take a moment. Take October 1st through 4th. Do it now. Send us your videos and photos. We'll post them. Tag Safe Futures. We just want to say thank you.
Okay. So you don't have to go to the October 3rd kickoff at the Philomena's. You could just do it online and then get together either on your own walk or with your neighbor, the people that you're, in your intimate group. Are we encouraging people to wear masks when they walk?
Absolutely.
Yes,
social distancing and masks, that we want everybody to do to make sure. I know there are some people who are creating teams in their neighborhoods, and they are social distancing walking around their neighborhoods in support of this. So that's a great idea, and having a socially distanced event to support this. And that's why we're giving out. Last year we had some great t-shirts and were wonderful, but we thought it only appropriate that we remind everybody that safety for all of us, not only for victims of domestic violence, but for all those who are at risk of COVID, which is every single one of us, but also the compromise, that we wear our masks and align with what we've set up for our state to try to keep everybody safe there as well.
And will there be any contests or awards for people who have the best group or the biggest group or things of that nature?
Yes, so we have something called the Community Spirit Award. It's our Purple Sneaker Award. And last year, New London High School was the recipient of that. We had a tremendous turnout with them, from the cheerleaders to the pep band. It was amazing. This year, because we're virtual, we're doing it a little bit different. So show your spirit for the community in your 4K your way. We will have prizes for the most unique team name, and perhaps your favorite hashtag. There could be a lot of things. So you never know, when you post that picture or video, you might win a prize. And as I said, we are having a raffle at the registration drive on Saturday, October 3rd with Q105. So you can buy your tickets there for some great raffle prizes as well.
Okay, great. So is there anything else that you need to tell people to do? Well, before we leave, we'll put the website on the screen again and give final instructions as to how to participate in the walk. Let me just turn to the next slide. Maybe you just want to read it because it's really good. You want to just read it, Melissa?
Well, if I could see it, I would read it.
Oh, you don't see it? Oh, it's one of the slides. I see it. All right, let me read it. You can walk, run, bike, skip, hop, walk your dog or cat, ride a horse, march, cartwheel, and even dance your way to 4K. We are going to need you more than ever to lace up those sneaks, put on those dancing shoes, or get the leash out as you gather a team rally supporters. Okay. Apparently did I need to share the screen? Did you see the walk poster? Were you able to see that?
We did see that.
Oh,
And
well,
you'll
it's
see,
interesting.
yes,
Go ahead.
you will see all those images on all of our social media. We encourage people to share, because when you share with your friends and family any of your posts, it helps create more awareness. And you may actually send that to someone who needs our help. And that's the most important thing.
Okay, so you did see the image of the walk poster that I had up on the screen. That was on there?
Yes.
Very important.
Yep.
Okay, great. I don't know why the last one that I had wasn't on there, but fine. I want you to feel free, first, Melissa, to give me any final thoughts and any other instructions about the walk. And as we do so, I would ask our studio people to put up the website, the Facebook page, and the hotline number one more time, that we can leave people with those messages. There is the website, www.safefuturesct.org. Go there to register and also learn all about domestic violence issues. There's the hotline, very important. And let's just leave that one up until we conclude. So Melissa, your final thoughts and about the walk or anything else involving October.
Well, we are appreciative of our community. October, National Domestic Violence Month. Let's do something each and every day to help someone by either having a number, or most importantly, what we've said all through here is listening. It's the most important thing you can do for somebody who faces the challenges that domestic violence presents, especially amid this time during the pandemic. So we ask that you join us October 1st through 4th. You can register anytime. You can send us your photos and your videos of how you're going to 4K your way. Remember that awareness is what's most important, because that's the beginning for victims and survivors.
Okay, and now Nazmi, your final thoughts and our best wishes for continued work that you can do to bring the communications and the programs to the community. Nazmi.
Well, Sheila, again, thank you so much for having us, for always thinking of us and bringing us onto your show. I'm excited to see what folks come up with. I'm excited to see how people 4K, and I'm looking forward to our community coming together like they always do. I'm very, very excited. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you, Nazmi and Melissa from Safe Futures. Please, everyone, here's the hotline number. Go to the website. Register for the walk. It sounds like fun. Get together with family members, other close people that you are allowed to be with during this time. Support an important cause. And most importantly, as Nazmi and Melissa said, listen to yourselves. Many of you that we're talking to out there have issues and emotional needs. You need to be listened to. Take advantage of a wonderful organization in our community that will bring you help and listen to you, and take care of those around you in terms of healthy relationships. So thank you so much. This has been Talk Back. We will see you next time. Again, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Bye. Bye, Nazmi and Melissa. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, everybody.
Okay. Thank you.